I have to apologize. After spending 5 days at NADA with car dealers in Orlando, I've contracted a virus. And excuse me. So when you go to Disney with dealers, sometimes you come home with more than you left with. So good thing it wasn't Las Vegas this year. Anyway, a warm welcome, and thank you for having me here at my very first meeting. It's good to be back in Detroit, and I think it's fair to say that it's good to be alive in 2010. Hands up who survived 2009. Maybe give yourself a round of applause. You're looking for something to cheer for, so there's your opportunity. For those who don't know, I somewhat recently moved back to the area after 4 years in Munich, Germany. That is not me. Where the loathing for the American car industry is deep and sometimes a bit paranoid. So imagine, if you will, if you left the American industry in 2005 and returned some 4.5 years later. Imagine how different the world is. What a world. Unimaginable, heartbreaking, and totally changed. So 4 years ago, Chrysler's hourly employees reported to work to find checks in their mailbox. $650. It was called profit sharing. And around Metro Detroit, you'd find all kinds of these babies rolling around the roads. Even this guy was rolling around Auburn Hills for a while. Followed shortly thereafter by this guy. Memories. 4 very long years ago, Delphi filed for the largest bankruptcy in U.S. automotive history, a process that would take just about the entire time that I was in Bavaria. Rick Wagner, Tom Lasorda, Bill Ford were the hot topics in the Detroit industry. Jim Press was a Toyota guy, and this was the large truck that he was making his play on. And the mystery investor who was suddenly buying up VW shares was none other than a little sports car maker in Stuttgart. There were rumors that a takeover could even be in the works. Porsche wanted to own Volkswagen. So my, how times have changed. When I came back in '09, imagine you re-enter this world at that time, as I did. This is the world that you find. Thousands of closed dealerships, suppliers who are in desperate need of financial help, GM with a new chairman, Chrysler in bankruptcy, and the federal government considering something called cash for clunkers. That was all in one day last year. What else? The government in charge at GM. The Chinese in charge at Hummer. Italians in charge at Chrysler. And the most famous part that we all know now, apologies. Indeed, the world has become a complex place, full of congested, crowded, and all kinds of questions, full of headlines that never cease. Storylines that are constantly adding new chapters and changes that emerge every day now. One very important thing that the last year has taught us is that globally, there's nowhere to hide. Commonization, coupled with consolidation, has left some very powerful players with a footprint that is more global than ever. In Europe, there were shockwaves. When Lehman sank in September 2008, Luxembourg took notice. When suppliers in Detroit suffered cash flow problems, partners in Dusseldorf froze their budgets. But I want to briefly talk about how trends overseas affect what's happening here. There is no more Eurozone versus NAFTA versus Asia Pacific. Yes, we are different in our approaches, but ultimately we are more one industry than ever. So what are we watching? Here are some trends as we look at the state of the industry. Green and green-related regulation. Like the Europeans, North Americans have become much more focused on improving fuel efficiency and cutting CO2. Attend any motor show, including the one in Geneva in a couple of weeks, and you'll see electric vehicles all over the place. They're all the rage, especially in Europe, where Volkswagen wants to take the lead. Plug-in hybrids, electric cars, fuel cells are on everyone's mind. By 2014, the 6 largest automakers in the US will be producing 180,000 units of clean running cars. Will anyone drive them? That's the question. Unlike the Europeans, taxes at the gas pump are not part of the plan. And at $2.75 a gallon, will the consumer really get the return on investment? Some automakers, like BMW, are gambling that they will. BMW is filling its pipeline with more 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines, vehicles that have been in Europe for a long time now and are just now trickling into our streets here. What about sales? Here's where North Americans can learn a lot about what's happening in Western Europe. We all know about this program. Cash for Clunkers spurred a ton of demand, cleared out a lot of inventory, and jump-started a sinking economy. Was it helpful in the long term? Scrappage in Europe helped keep the market across the Eurozone afloat. But what's the lingering effect? Where does it go from here? The major markets in Europe are struggling in the post-scrappage fire sale. German car sales fell for a second straight month in January, and those scrappage schemes are now all trailing off. Sergio Marchionne doesn't just avoid suits, he hates days off. He uses the same work-at-all-costs approach first implemented during the Fiat turnaround. Now he's using it at Chrysler. Where does this marriage end up? Without immediate product in the pipeline, Marchionne has to hope that fuel prices stay low, then rise in about 18 months. To get his level of desired market share, Marchionne needs the North American public to make a rapid shift to European-sized cars led by his Fiat 500. But the 500 and other Fiat-like vehicles play well in Europe's crowded streets, where there's no parking lots like the ones in Somerset. Will they play well here? They have to in order for Chrysler to survive. We all know this guy. At GM, there's hope with new leadership, and that leadership will drive better results. With Mark Royce now running North America, he can use some of his overseas experience in Australia to help fix this market. But there are other important markets for General Motors right now. And Nick Riley running Opel and Kevin Whale running China. Those are both growth markets that will help GM's bottom line. Which is good news, considering that costs have been slashed and once damaged brands have been cleared out. The balance sheet is rinsed. And then there's Ford, finally using the breadth of its global footprint to make great cars here in North America. Before leaving Germany, my wife asked a simple question. Can we get a Kuga in America? Can we get a C-Max in America? Can we get an S-Max in America? No, 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 not yet. And they're coming. Great vehicles that will provide an additional boost to a brand that's already in the midst of a resurgence. One Ford means leveraging great designs, impressive powertrains, and product that will turn heads. So, green shoots at last. There are challenges. Neil mentioned some of them. The key in Europe or in America is revenue. How to build a brand, how to generate consumer confidence are all the things that make great car companies. And in closing, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to have great car companies here again. We've already seen that suppliers are well positioned, car companies are well positioned, and there are more exciting brands on the road than ever before. There are lingering questions, but there could be some interesting answers. Thanks.